In a culture that's pretty much obsessed with birthday countdowns and Instagram perfect parties, there's this quiet group of people who just let the day pass. No cake, no big fuss, just another Tuesday. So today, we're going to get into the psychology of why some people skip their birthday and what they might just understand about happiness that the rest of us are missing. Right, so this is the big question, isn't it? Why treat your birthday like any other day? We tend to see these birthday skippers as maybe a little strange, but what if their choice reveals a totally different and maybe even deeper way of looking at what makes a life meaningful? And you can really see the two worlds here. On one side, you have what we could call the celebration culture, the huge parties, the endless social media posts, this feeling that you're obligated to be the star of the show for a day. And then there's the other side, the quiet reality for those who just opt out. Solitude, no fuss, because it's their personal preference. It's just another Tuesday.
Okay, so let's dig into the first major reason people decide to skip the whole thing. It's really all about escaping what psychologists call the expectation trap. This huge, immense pressure for the day to be perfect, which ironically often leads to the exact opposite feeling.
I mean, think about that for a second. Your birthday stops being just a fun day, and suddenly it becomes this intense annual referendum on your life. Am I where I'm supposed to be? Have I achieved enough? Do enough people like me? It's like a performance review that you never asked for, and honestly, a lot of people would rather just not show up.
And there's actually a name for this feeling: occasion-based expectation anxiety. It's this perfect storm of social pressure from the outside and your own pressure from the inside, where a day is supposed to be amazing and you're supposed to feel special. But when reality doesn't quite meet those crazy high standards, the disappointment can feel, well, pretty crushing.
And this quote from clinical psychologist Dr. Andrea Bonior just nails it. She says that for people who felt that disappointment over and over again, maybe since they were kids, they learned that the only way to win is to, well, not play the game. They just sever the entire cycle of hope and letdown. It's the only way to guarantee you won't be disappointed. So, okay, that's the social pressure. But it actually goes a lot deeper than that, to a more existential level. We're moving beyond what other people think and getting into the core of how we see ourselves, our relationship with time, with our ego, and our own identity. Because at their core, birthdays are really just countdown clocks. Every single one is a blunt reminder that time is marching on. This can stir up something called temporal anxiety, that real distress that comes from being forced to look at aging and mortality right in the face. For some people, it's just easier to refuse to participate in that yearly reckoning. And what's fascinating is that by not marking the day, they create this little loophole in their own mind. It's something called an age identity disconnect. They stop identifying with a number. They're not 43, they're not 57, they're just them. In a way, it's like they've freed themselves from the tyranny of the timeline. Now, this might sound a little strange at first, but rejecting the birthday spotlight isn't always about low self-esteem. It can actually be this profound act of humility, this idea of cosmic humility. It suggests that there's a deep sense of peace that comes from just accepting you're a small part of a massive, incredible universe. You don't need to be the center of it all to have value. And get this, there's actual research that backs this up. A really interesting study from Yale found a pretty stark contrast. People who go all out with elaborate celebrations, they tend to score higher on narcissistic personality traits. Meanwhile, the people who prefer to keep it quiet or do nothing at all, they actually show higher levels of empathy and report having stronger bonds with their community. Which brings us to our next really important idea: control. For a lot of people, skipping a birthday is a really powerful move. It's about reclaiming their own autonomy from the weight of what everyone else expects. It's about taking back the pen and writing their own story. This plugs right into something called self-determination theory. The basic idea is that people with a strong internal sense of who they are, they just don't need external validation. They don't need a party or 100 Facebook messages to feel good about themselves. Their worth isn't tied to some ritual that happens once a year. They're in charge of their own self-worth. So, who's most likely to feel this way? Well, it probably won't shock you to learn that research shows introverts are 3 times more likely to skip birthday celebrations. For them, the whole performance of it all, the happy face, the forced gratitude, being on, it can be incredibly draining. And that just highlights this powerful point. A lot of the time, the celebration isn't really for the birthday person.
It's for the friends who want to party or for the family that needs to show they care. By skipping that whole performance, birthday skippers are basically choosing to live more authentically. They're asking, what would I actually want to do today? But, we have to be careful here. It's not like all birthday avoidance is some healthy philosophical choice. So let's talk for a second about when it might be a red flag before we pivot to a much more empowering way to think about celebrating in general. Right? So the context here is everything. If someone's avoiding their birthday because of depression or because they feel like they don't deserve to be celebrated, that's not really a choice. That's a symptom. And sometimes, making a huge deal about not celebrating can just be its own weird form of attention seeking. But for the people who are making a healthy, conscious choice, something pretty amazing happens. They don't just stop celebrating things. They change what they celebrate. They swap out this arbitrary, calendar-based ritual for celebrations of real, experience-based milestones. Finishing a big project, learning a new skill, or marking a moment of personal growth. This is really what it means to have an internal validation system. You don't need society's calendar to tell you when to feel proud or happy. You measure your own growth against your own standards, your own values. You're the one who decides what's worth celebrating. And this really gets to the heart of the whole philosophy. People who skip their birthdays haven't rejected celebration. They've rejected obligation. They've figured out that if you're living a life that you actually value, then any day can be special. Life itself becomes the celebration. So, we'll just leave you with this one thought to chew on. The next time your birthday or any celebration comes around, just ask yourself this simple but pretty powerful question. Am I doing this because I truly want to, or because I feel like I'm supposed to? The answer might tell you a whole lot about your own definition of happiness.